talk a little bit about why teaching reading is such a complex issue and sometimes a contentious issue. There's been a couple of different theoretical perspectives or paradigms that inform how we teach reading. And over the last 20 to 30 years, it's been very popular to try and have students recognize whole words within context, and we have really prioritized reading within sentences and within stories. And the idea is that with enough exposures, children will start to recognize some of these words, and with context, they'll be able to figure out what some unfamiliar words are. And where that kind of goes against the grain of research and science is that we know that a lot of children really need to spend more time looking at the internal word structure. So figuring out what are the sounds that are inside of the word and how do the sounds inside of the spoken word match up with the letters visually they're seeing on the page. And where this gets difficult is, I often hear teachers say, I've been teaching for 25 years, I know what works. And they find that their experience goes against what the science is saying. And one of the ways to interpret that is when we look at the research, we see that typical developing readers, those that are being pretty successful, in grade 3, they're completely capable of doing phonics-based tasks. So they can tell you which letters and sounds go together, and they can recognize letter combinations that group together around a sound, even if they've had no formal phonics instruction. They've figured out how to do some of that behind the scenes or fundamental unit level work just by reading. And that's because they're typical developing readers. And so what we see is when we teach reading that way, just focusing on the whole word, 60 or 70 or 80% of the kids in the class are going to learn to read. So the teacher has a lot of reinforcement that they're doing it in a way that works. However, what we know for that other 20 or 30% of kids is that when they get whole word instruction and they get to grade 3, they're not reading at the same level as their peers, and they can't do the phonics-based work. They don't have the capacity for it. And what we see in the research is that when those children get explicit phonics work, then they're able to do the phonics work, and they have higher reading outcomes when they get to grade 3. So what this tells us is that if we're looking at core instruction and best practice principles, there would be phonics practices in place for all kids. Because even though those kids figure out how to read without needing it, it makes reading easier and faster when it's there. So phonics instruction for all kids actually helps all kids and all readers. And it especially helps those kids who don't have a typical learning profile. They need phonics. The other piece of this, though, is there are programs out there that focus solely on phonics, and you can spend thousands of dollars and put in hundreds of hours learning phonics, and what we see is that kids actually improve their phonics skills a lot, and they don't actually get to where they need to be in overall reading abilities. So phonics is a necessary component, and it's not sufficient on its own. It's not the be-all, and it's not the end-all, and it's not just the only answer. So phonics is one component of a good program, and it's just that. It's one component. And there are several other pieces that are often missing, and you really need to look at things developmentally, and you need to see which skills need to be in place first that will allow those later skills to develop. So that's what makes reading a little bit complex, and it's why some assessment is really crucial. And the assessment really allows us to see the individual profile. Where is this student at in their skills? Which skills are intact and which ones need some practice? And in knowing that, what do we build in around a therapy plan to put those skills in place and have them improve? But also, where are we going next? What skills do we anticipate will start to fill in? Which ones do we know will probably naturally fill in if we can give them these precursor skills? And which ones are going to need further practice? So that's where we really need to start to drill in on learners as individual. Even when we're looking at core instruction and best practices, we know what we can put in place for all learners, but we do want to start to attend to individual learning needs and differences. So that's some of the complexity of this work, and it's the stuff that I really enjoy and love. I love getting to know individual students, doing some assessment, learning their individual profiles, and in making an individual plan that really allows children to grow confidence and self-esteem. Because when you're giving them work that's at their level and you're coaching them through the things that are hard and they become easy, kids learn one word at a time. I can do this. I just read that word, I just spelled that word, and they start to see that it's actually possible that one day they'll learn all of the words. And that possibility is what's missing now. They've had a lot of focus, a lot of instruction, a lot of practice, but they're not getting that reward. They just keep finding it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. And they shut down and they experience shame, frustration, anger. They blame themselves. Teachers are competent, capable adults. They must be teaching me the right way. If I can't learn, it's my fault. That's the internalized message that these kids take on. And with the proper instruction that's at a child's level, we can melt away a lot of that shame really quickly and replace it with confidence. And once a kid is learning, is willing to try, learning just takes place. Thanks for your time today. I hope you learned a little something about the complexity of reading and what we could put in place in our approaches. And I'll continue to reach out to you here on Facebook and other platforms and spread the message that there's hope for kids who are having difficulty reading. There's nothing wrong with them. They just need things to be adjusted a little bit for them, individually tailored. Thanks. I'm Trent from Speak to Read.